Welcome to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/Animal Stories for Kids. And now, it's time for our story. Once upon a time, there was an armadillo lizard named Lindiwe. Lindiwe the armadillo lizard lived a happy and carefree life. She lived in the crevices of a big rock in the middle of a huge wilderness, and she was always exploring the wilderness and learning new things. One of Lindiwe's favorite activities was to go looking for insects to eat. Lindiwe the armadillo lizard loved eating termites and spiders, and she was always careful to only eat enough so she could have some more on another day. The problem was that the only spot she knew where to find food was on the other side of the wilderness from where she lived in the crevices of the large rock. All the best termite homes and spiders were there, but Lindiwe the armadillo lizard had to avoid being eaten by all the predators on the way there. This made eating hard for her. But there was no other place she knew of to find food. One day, Lindiwe was out looking for termites when she saw something that made her heart skip a beat. It was a mongoose, just staring at the lizard, ready to eat it. Lindiwe knew that she was in danger. She quickly hid under a nearby bush, but she knew that the mongoose had seen her. Lindiwe stayed under the bush for a long time, but the mongoose didn't leave. "I can't just wait here all day," Lindiwe the armadillo lizard said to herself. "But I am getting hungry and those termites and spiders won't eat themselves." Lindiwe finally decided that she needed to do something. She couldn't stay under the bush forever. So she slowly crawled out from under the bush and tried to act as if she wasn't afraid. The mongoose went straight towards Lindiwe the armadillo lizard, but she quickly rolled up by biting her tail, opening the hard spiky scales on the outside of her body. And her spiky scales were now sticking out. The mongoose tried to bite Lindiwe from the side, but the spiky armor was just too spiky and dangerous looking for the mongoose to get a good grip. "Hey, what in the wilderness?" said the mongoose. "How am I supposed to eat you if you make it hard to even touch you?"
I'm sorry for any inconvenience,"
said Lindiwe the armadillo lizard, with her tail still in her mouth.
"but I don't want to get eaten today, so I'm gonna stay like this until you leave."
The mongoose said, I can open you easy. I think I can figure this out." So the mongoose started pushing Lindiwe the armadillo lizard around, trying to figure out how to open her up from her defensive rolled-up position. The mongoose made Lindiwe roll over and even tried tossing her up in the air. Nothing worked. The armadillo lizard's armor was too tough for the mongoose to get through. After a few minutes, the mongoose gave up and left. Lindiwe was safe, but she was also very shaken. She had never been so close to being eaten before. Lindiwe went to her favorite spot to eat food, and she ate as much as she could, and it was so good. And all that trouble made it worth it for her. And she went back home as fast as she could. The next day, Lindiwe the armadillo lizard was hungry again, and she wanted to look somewhere else to find food instead of going across the wilderness where she could get eaten. So she went the opposite way, searching for a new spot for food. Lindiwe searched for hours, but she couldn't find food or even a safe place to eat. Then she saw something that really scared her. It was an osprey, and it was overhead, and Lindiwe the armadillo lizard had a bad feeling the osprey already locked its eyes on her. Lindiwe kept looking for food, but couldn't stop looking up to see the osprey. Everywhere she went, the osprey was always lurking overhead. She tried hiding in the bushes and even under the rocks, but the osprey would always seem to find her, swooping down and chasing Lindiwe the armadillo lizard everywhere she hid. Lindiwe was starting to lose hope. She was so hungry that she could barely think. She knew that she couldn't keep avoiding the osprey. And as Lindiwe the armadillo lizard was sitting under a rock, she knew that she had to do something soon, or she would starve. Lindiwe took a deep breath and stood up. She walked out from under the rock and into the open. She looked up at the sky and saw the osprey circling overhead. "Okay, osprey," Lindiwe the armadillo lizard said. "I'm sick of this. Let's settle this once and for all." The osprey swooped down and landed in front of Lindiwe. It looked at her with its piercing yellow eyes. "What do you want?" "Armadillo lizard," the osprey said. "I want to make a deal," Lindiwe said. "I'll let you eat some of my termites and spiders, but you'll have to leave me alone." The osprey laughed. "You think you can make a deal with me?" it said. "I'm the predator, and you're the prey. I could eat you right now, and there wouldn't be a thing you could do to stop me." Lindiwe knew that the osprey was right. She couldn't make a deal with it, and doing nothing would be giving up at this point. She had to do something, so she did the only thing she knew how to do, and she bit her tail. Lindiwe the armadillo lizard quickly rolled up again and opened her spiky scales again. The osprey tried to bite her, but its beak couldn't penetrate her armor. The osprey tried to pry Lindiwe open with its talons, but she was too tightly rolled up. The osprey was starting to get frustrated. It had never had so much trouble eating a meal before. Finally, the osprey said, "I don't even know why I bothered with a small lizard like you. I'm gonna find bigger food to eat." And the osprey flew away, and Lindiwe the armadillo lizard was safe. Lindiwe unrolled herself and shook herself off. She was exhausted and hungry, but she was also alive. Then she looked around, and she noticed a new spot for food and found a whole bunch of crickets and ate as much as she could. And all that trouble made it worth it for her. Lindiwe said, "Interesting. Now I know 2 spots around this wilderness to eat food." And she went back to her home in the crevices of the big rock. The next day, Lindiwe the armadillo lizard decided she didn't want to go so far from the rock to find food. And so she decided that she would try looking behind the rock where she lived for the first time. She never really checked behind the big rock, but she thought to herself, "What could it hurt to look right behind where we live? It's closer than crossing the whole wilderness." So she looked around behind the big rock, and she couldn't believe her eyes. It was the biggest termite mound she ever saw. So she went and ate up a few termites to taste them. And they tasted really good. And Lindiwe the armadillo lizard told all of her friends and family, and they all had a great feast, making sure not to eat all of the termites so they can have some more for another day. And Lindiwe thought about all the danger and trouble she went through to get termites and spiders on the other side of the wilderness, when the whole time there was a humongous termite mound behind their home. When she told her friends and family about everything, they all laughed with her. Lindiwe was proud of herself for crossing the wilderness and finding her food, even though it was difficult. And for her, the insects actually tasted better because she had worked hard for them. She also learned that she was able to protect herself from predators. But the best part was, she now had more places where she could eat. And the armadillo lizard lived happily ever after. The end. The armadillo lizard is also called the armadillo-girdled lizard the armadillo spiny-tailed lizard, and the golden armadillo lizard, and they can be found in the western coast of South Africa. Armadillo lizards can be found in the desert regions and wildernesses, and they'll seek shelter in burrows, rock crevices, or among tree roots. Armadillo lizards have no relation to the armadillo at all, but they're named armadillo lizard because, just like the armadillo, when they're threatened, the armadillo lizard curls up using its outer scales to protect it, just like an armadillo would use its armored shell to protect itself. Armadillo lizards are small and flat, which helps them fit into crevices and rocks. They have dull brown or yellow-colored scales with a yellow or violet-colored belly, and black eyes and a black mouth. Their flattened body is covered by spiny scales, which form hard plates across the back. On the underside, they have soft skin. Their sandy color allows them to camouflage in their habitat. They have a broad, triangular head, and their tail is almost as long as their body. Armadillo lizards can be 3 to 6.5 inches long and can live up to 20 to 25 years. Armadillo lizards have the ability to drop their own tails when in danger and can grow it back slowly, but this is only as a last resort, and their jaws are very powerful. Armadillo lizards have family groups which have been observed to be as many as 50 living together. They're diurnal and will spend a part of their day taking in the sun. They communicate with each other with head bobbing, flicking of the tongue, and wagging their tail. The armadillo lizard is also ovoviviparous, which means fertilization is internal and they give birth to live babies, producing usually 1 or 2 at a time. The armadillo lizard will go far just to find food. Some have been observed to go up to 18 miles away from their home to find food. The armadillo lizard is a carnivore but eats mainly insects like termites and spiders, but they also eat beetles, millipedes, scorpions, and plants. The armadillo lizard doesn't have many predators because it's so hard to get through their armor, but most of their predators are birds of prey. And when the armadillo lizard feels threatened, it will bite its own tail, curling up into a ring shape, exposing its hard scales in a defensive position that makes it hard to handle and really scary to look at for other animals. The armadillo lizard is a slow-moving animal as well. Have you seen a real-life armadillo lizard before? If you have, where did you see it? If you want to write to us, ask your parent to email us at animalstoriesforkids@gmail.com and tell us what you think of our stories. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/animalstoriesforkids. Until next time, bye!